Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Welcome to another special edition of Ars Boni. Today is the 1st of March, 2022. I have the pleasure and the privilege to speak to Iryna Lishchuk today. Iryna is a former research associate of mine in Hanover. So we spent several years of cooperation together in Hanover. As you might know, I was in Hanover before I came to Vienna. So before 2017, Iryna and myself, we were working together in several European projects on IT law, in particular data protection law, in some European research context, let's put it like this. So the typical setup was a European research project under Horizon 2020 or FP6 or FP7. And there Iryna and myself were involved. So I know Iryna quite well for many years because before this period of cooperation during projects, she was one of my students. She did the LL.M program in Hanover. I was responsible for, called ULISP. So I don't know when we met for the first time, Iryna. Do you remember when did we meet first time? 10 years ago?
So, yes, when there were ULISP lectures or something like that, I think.
Yeah, and that happened when? When did you do ULISP? In which year did you do?
2012.
2012, so quite exactly 10 years ago. So I know her now for 10 years. And I must also say that she was very successful in convincing all the people in Hanover of her legal skills and her work. Although I must say her basic education in law was not from a European Union country. So coming from Ukraine, she made it then through the ULISP LL.M in an EU program to a EU master, and from there then to a researcher, a well-respected researcher in quite some of the projects I was also involved in. Her background, her national background, I mentioned this already, and this is the main reason why we are talking together. Her national background is Ukraine, which is also perhaps worth being mentioned is that she is an author on the European data protection legal situation all over in Europe. So in a book that was edited by myself and others and published by Beck, which is called Betrieblicher Datenschutz, she took care of the description on data protection, ironically, in Russia, which is also one of the starting points here, I would say, which is that obviously also the legal framework between Russia and Ukraine is not that different when you look into it in some details, at least in the areas of the law that I have a little bit of an overview. So I think this is enough to explain how we met each other, and obviously neither Iryna nor myself are in Ukraine at the moment, nor do we have any specific expertise on the issues of public international law that might be relevant here. I may remind you that I had a similar conversation on this with my colleague from the University of Vienna, Ursula Kribaum, just 2 days ago. But it should be a very open and very direct conversation about what's really happening in Ukraine and what this has as an impact on people who work at universities as a student or as researchers in the European Union. And this is the reason why I invited her, and I'm very happy that Iryna accepted this invitation. Thank you so much for being here, Iryna. I know that it's a very, very challenging and distracting and annoying period all of us are going through. Perhaps I may ask you for the very beginning to give us a very short overview about how you are at the moment and how your family is at the moment and how you know that the situation in the areas of Ukraine you have relatives or relations to looks like at the moment.
Well, at the moment, so yes, it is quite absolutely distracting. But first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you all the people and the audience for taking your time and taking your interest. And I have your solidarity to be with Ukraine. Well, it's almost a week now that the war is going on. And of course, it is very distracting on the mental mentality, I think, of all Ukrainians, because we could, like, for example, I couldn't really sleep for a couple of nights before, and it is still hard because you are still connected to your iPhone and to your phone to observe the situation there. Because my parents, for example, they stayed in Kiev because they had a possibility to go, but the house like we have, it's too cold to stay there. That's why they returned. So therefore, when you look the everything what's happening there, it directly affects you, and of course, it doesn't leave you like in stable position, so to say. So I think a lot of Ukrainians here, I think they are in the same situation because the occupation, it went in bombing. It goes through like all major cities, and therefore it's like you live here, but you more or less live there. We're also making a lot here, but I think it's like how I feel, more or less, not what we do, but I can explain what we do, like how it started. Okay, I think it started long ago because we had a vacation in the Ukrainian Carpathian Mountains in December, and it was the first time that I saw a TV set, and was a TV set, and there were already there troops of Russians training on the borders, and it was already kind of surprising that there are 130,000 troops training. So, and we were with my family, with my brother's family. So like, and it was already like, it was the first time when we saw it, and I asked what they think about it, whether they have some plans, and but the position was that we thought it's like in the Donetsk or Lugansk, like it's like a local something, and it's not, it will not be war. We thought Putin will not take the like be so like crazy, so to say, to invade the whole country. And the whole month, not the whole month, but from that time on, it was very nervous situation over there. And with conversations with them, we had a couple of discussions whether they need to go to here, like to take the flight or so, but nobody knew when it will start. But there it was a time when the United States started to warn the countries in Europe that there were troops and they want to invade Ukraine, and they started to escape their embassies, their like capital and so. And then it was a time when the Ukrainian ambassador started to ask for support, for like military support and everything. So the whole, and already I think the last, when I talked to my family and so, some tried to say, no, there will be no war, don't panic, because it's like panic and don't do that. On the other hand, my mother, she didn't want to hear, because she says that she was like on common like some like medicines already for a week or so. She doesn't want to hear it because it's really like goes to your like nerves. And at work, and so because she was in an insurance company, big insurance company, it was first Russian, like Soviet, it was monopoly insurance company in Soviet Union, and it like departed, and it is like a big insurance company in Russia, Ukraine. Now it's Ukraine owned, but they were. It was very panicking situation, and still on the 23rd of February, it is the first date. It was said 16th of February, like invasion, but it didn't stay true. Then on the 23rd of February, we had also the Kiev Major Leibniz Lishchuk. He said that Russia is already like de facto declares war. And I talked to my mother on the 23rd, and she says, well, don't tell me this, because we're so nervous here that it's completely distracting every like news like that. And then on the 24th, well, it was horrible, because I took my phone, and it was like in the morning, like around whatever 7 something, and I watched the groups, and it said that it started like there, and it was yeah, like you feel like trembling. And so I called my mother, and so she said that they heard the airplanes going. It was very big noise, and yeah, like they understood that the war started, because yeah, they prepared for that mentally, so to say. What they did, said she wanted to pack something, and then they called my brother, and they went to a house they have near Kiev, like 30 kilometers. and but it took them like 3 hours or so to get there. So it's like how it started, and yeah, it's horrible because the whole of Kiev, and they and exactly it was like, for example, we have a song. Then about the beginning of the Second World War, it was 22nd of June, 4 a.m. Kiev was bombed, and we were announced that the war starts. And it was the 24th of February, like 5 or something a.m. It was more or less the same. But there was no announcement. It was just like the bombs going on. So yes, and then it was attempts, like in Kiev, it was very big traffic jams. The city was tried to flee to go the way from who could go where, but it's not. Some people returned because you could not buy some petrol and everything, and there were horrible traffic jams, and the bombing went on in different cities. And they started with Kiev, with Kharkiv. It is in the north. It started in simultaneously, I think, also in Lviv. The first attempt was about the military objects like air bases and the infrastructures. They didn't take civilians, but then it deteriorated. But I mean, it's completely. I'm also a co-founder of the Association of Ukrainians in Lower Saxony, where it is in Hannover. And we already started to discuss, to organize to think about it, to organize some help with money, with refugees, with horrible pictures. We had meetings here too. The first one already on Thursday evening. That we gathered there. It was crowded, and the next meeting was on Saturday, where we already asked the community here, and there were some politicians with for aid and support and everything. But it is very breaking your nerves and your mental state. So I think we are all in position of helping, of asking, talking with our families, and yeah, but it's not good what's going on there. And so how I feel and how they feel. Yeah, I think it's different how I feel and how they feel, of course. But
yeah. And if I understood you correctly, Iryna, your parents are not in Kiev at the moment, but
no,
they are in Kiev now back.
Because my mother had to return because we have a house in the village, but it's not like a house where you can live. It's not prepared for living. Therefore, they returned with my uncle here. My brother stays there, but they cannot move from there because the bridges they are broken now, because they go to Kiev because it's like the target number one. They occupy now the major cities of Kherson, the Kharkiv, and Kiev. That's why they really explode their bridges. Therefore, I don't know how they will get from there, because you need to cross a couple of rivers from those regions. And my mother, they returned, and now they stay in one flat altogether, all our relatives, because another part of our family, there were another city near Kiev, and where there is a military base, and it was also bombed on the first day, on the 21st of February in the morning. So they all stay in one place, but well, it's not good how they stay there, because it's like in the first floor, they try to block the windows. And they tried to sleep in the rooms, not on the windows, but somewhere like inside of the house, because there were missile attacks on the houses as well. So they don't know what to expect. But the conditions are not good.
And is there still a communication possible? So does the cell phone still work?
Yes. What is good that in Kiev, for us, the protection of Kiev is very, very high. From the first days, they really shoot. The plan was, as far as I understand it, I'm not listening Russian news or whatever, but as far as I understood, the plan was to take Kiev for like a couple of days, like 2 for 2, and they spent a number of around 73 missile attacks was thrown on the first day. and only a very limited number landed in definitely in Kiev. And therefore, they protect Kiev the strongest because it is the capital. And this, as I understand the situation, Putin wants to, Zelensky, the president, is target number one. He wants to take over the political power. And therefore, Kiev is protected the highest. But of course, it is not easy because the fights are already around like 30 kilometers from Kiev. Therefore, in Kiev, yes, it is under attack now. We expect, and they are bombing it like every night or so, but the chances are not as good because a lot goes away. And with internet, as far as I know, with internet now it goes quite well. Everything is okay with my brother as well because I stay not in Kiev, but they have routers and everything. And as far as I know, the Elon Musk, they brought already the satellite.
Starlink, yeah, Starlink.
They already brought it so that connection will work. So therefore, I also can follow cell lines. It also works. So internet connection works, and I think all works.
And food supply?
Food supply, I think they have very long queues, but the Klitschko, the mayor, they organize it, and in the major supermarkets, and they have also local now like chains where you can just order it per internet or at least put yourself into the list. So everything in Kiev, because Kiev was not really under such hard attacks for now, as for example, Kharkiv and Kherson. I think that there is one city where there is truly humanitarian catastrophe because as far as I know, they didn't really allow Red Cross to go into Lugansk to escape, to take off the refuge or to the injured. And they also blocked their shops and everything. So there are really cities that are that don't have electricity or water or like, and there are also some people who get into them because they use the underground park places or parking places or just underground what is like killers like we have here for to hide from the attacks, but the conditions are also not as good and some people really are blocked there. But it is not you can still buy in Kiev everything, it is still supplied, they take care of it. But nobody knows how it will proceed. But the Agrar Minister of Ukraine, he said that there will be supplies of at least minimum. So they take care of it. Yes.
Yeah, and just one last question about this: the weather at the moment, it's still winter, right? So it's very cold and snowy.
Yeah, winter this year is not as cold as it could be. Some years we had like -20. Now it's a bit colder than here. But it is not as cold as it might be. So it is, but it's still winter. It is not spring there. Yes, it is definitely colder than here, like 10 degrees colder. Yes.
Okay. And you said before that when you were in Ukraine in December, it already started to look strange, and that people started to be concerned about an imminent threat that Russia might invade. But the conflict as such is much older than just December, obviously. So could you perhaps tell me how this conflict developed in the last years and how Ukraine and Ukrainians dealt with this conflict before it became so evident that things would escalate so quickly?
I would say the conflict, it lasts for like the whole existence of Ukraine, probably. It's like a 10 centuries history or something. Because of political situation or historically, Ukraine, okay, I'll tell it from the very origin, like Kiev was founded in 5th century, something like that. In the 10th century, it was the Kiev Rus, probably it was quite famous, like, you know, the Roman Empire of Byzantium. It was like quite famous like country. Then it was separated between different also neighboring countries like also Hungary, Austria, or Poland, Rzeczpospolita, or there was Turkish invasion, whatever. It was like those centuries. And Russia, like what we have, Russia, Moscow, for example, it was founded in 240, for example. St. Petersburg, it was founded in 16th century. Therefore, if you even compare the history, like the Ukraine, like Kiev, for example, and Russia, it was much, much older. But then there was these conflicts, and I don't really know the history of Russia, how it evolved. But around like 13th century or something, there were these wars, and that some of the battles there was already in 16th century. That Bogdan Khmelnytsky, he decided to go under Russian Empire because he had the choice between like Rzeczpospolita or Poland, so to say, and between Russia, and there was a connection to Russia already in 17th century. It was like agreement. Mm-hmm. From that time, Russia exploited Ukraine like as a working force, so to say, and as slaves. There was this stable exploitation of people. Already at that time, they suppressed culture. It was like a colony, so to say. So it was not like a equal member of the federation or whatever. It was like a colony of Russia. So it was therefore conflict goes very, very deep into the history of the country. Then around 19th century, there were first attempts of Ukraine to get independence, and the first Ukrainian states were declared from independent of Russia, like 1918. But they existed for like 3 years or something, because in 1913, the Bolsheviks came and they started complete like equalization in this denationalization, whatever you call it. And therefore, from 1920-30, it was already under the Soviet Union. For example, I can tell only about the history of my grandfather. He was in the they come from a village near Kiev. They had a rich house in that village because they worked a lot, like it was a agrar state, and they worked a lot, and they had like the best house in the village. And then the Bolsheviks came, they just put them out of the house and just took that house to make a council of the village there, and they stayed homeless, so to say. It's not because they were like stealing something, but because they just worked a lot. Therefore, and from the time of Soviet Union, my grandfather, he couldn't really enter the party and everything because it was like forbidden. Therefore, for example, I was born in 1983. But I speak Russian. I speak Russian. Why? Because my grandparents, they speak Ukrainian, but me and my brother, we speak Russian because I come originally from Kiev. And at that time, it was already complete movement of Russification. Therefore, it was this imperial endeavors to take over countries. I think it is in the spirit of Russia or empire of them, because it is basically not a democracy like you have it or we have it here, but it is more this totalitarian or imperial spirit, I guess. Yes. So it's not only with Ukraine, because this whole conflict, it was 1990 when Russia already had a war with Transnistria, then followed Ichkeria, then followed Chechnya, then in 2008 they had Georgia. After Georgia, 2014, they had Crimea and the Lugansk and Donetsk. But what is, like we had also this demonstration, and there was a representative of Georgian Association. He said, everybody thinks that it will stop. Like you think, okay, it is Chechnya, Putin will stop or Russia will stop. It didn't stop. Then it was Georgia. Everybody thinks, okay, that will stop. It doesn't stop. Then they go to Crimea and they think it will stop there. Then they go to Luhansk, then Donetsk, and the Ukraine thinks, okay, it will stop. Then now he invades the whole country. So therefore, the conflict, it is really very deeply rooted. But I think the real danger came with Putin. He is already like for 20 or 30 years at the power. So therefore, I think the real danger came with him, because with Boris Yeltsin and with they took the direction to democracy, but I think with Putin it goes into direction of occupation and then nationalization or whatever you call it. So I think it's like the origin of the conflict. Therefore, I think I understand the Ukrainians why they struggle so hard, because it's not only about the territory, it's about nation, it's about our culture, it's about our language, it's about our land, it's about like it's about nation. It's therefore it's like the origin of the conflict, but in very short terms, so to say. Yes.
And so, I mean, one of the problems I think that this whole conflict has from a Western perspective is that probably many of the Western Europeans did not really take this too serious either until, I don't know, early 2022 probably. Many of the Western Europeans would not have expected this really to happen in February, so just 4 weeks before the moment that it happened. Do you think that the Europeans were lazy in understanding what's going on, or were they misguided, or?
Well, frankly speaking, also with in our country, nobody really thought that he will invade the whole country, because I think it was already in 2014 or something, or when they occupied Crimea. It was 2014. I remember it quite well because it was the first years I stayed in Hannover, and it was a choice for me because I still remained. I worked for a law firm Artzinger in Kiev, and they retained my position there as a lawyer for a year when I had my studies. So I had a good possibility to return to Kiev. And it was 2014, already 2013, when when you watch TV and you see that demonstration that was the European movement already of Ukraine, and they had that. And there were already, they talked about 30,000 in Crimea. So therefore, I think already at that time, it was a decision why I chose to stay here, not go there, because I didn't know how the conflict will develop. Yes, and yeah, so.
And
the Western Europe, this guidance. So I think also in Ukraine, nobody knew what will happen, because we didn't want to take it seriously at that time. Nobody knew they will take Crimea. Nobody also knew about Donetsk, Luhansk. And at this time, there were rumors that there will be no war, that Putin will not attack, that there will be, if it will be like war, it will be local. And also Ukrainians didn't take it as serious. I think who took it serious are United States, probably Great Britain, because they were the first to warn the world and to take their ambassadors and to take their investments out of Ukraine. So I think they were the first to take it seriously. Then our politicians. I also talked to like wife of my brother, and she said, well, it is not, don't panic, people are panicking, don't take it, it's not so bad. So people couldn't really take it, nobody really understood it. I also know it was like more or less from the Second World War, there were also discussions about that, and there were like a brother of my grandmother, he worked he was a military, and he worked for the forces, and he had also conversation with his father, and the father said, well, the war will start, and he also said, no, there are these covenants about non-invasion. So it was more or less the same now, because nobody really understood will it happen or not, but we understood it will happen, but we didn't know when. So that it will happen like so quickly, we also were not really prepared for that. So I think for the Western, I think when Klitschko and our Kuleba and so for the ministries of foreign affairs, they started to warn. I think Europe didn't take it seriously at all, because they asked for weapons and everything, and Germany was already they were already starting to launch this Stream 2.
Nord Stream, yeah.
Yes, and there was position of Germany that we will send you like helms or something like. Already they blocked Estonia. Estonia also have a very bad history with Russia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
Latvia in particular too, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and therefore they took it also seriously, and they wanted to resend German weapons to Ukraine in support, and Germany blocked it for quite a long time. I think quite for long. Therefore, I think it was more or less the same position, except Great Britain and except the United States. Mm-hmm. So I think Europe really didn't take it serious for quite a long. But when they understood that it is real war, it is like people are dying, not only military people are dying. It's they completely conduct war against the rules. I mean, with no rules at all. It's like horrible how it goes. But I think now Europe takes it serious, and now because I think now if Ukraine has chances to win, because of our courage and because of European support with military and with weapons, because it's a lot of arms goes via Poland now. There are also the airplanes, the military airplanes in Poland. And our pilots will they will stay not in Ukraine, but in Poland. But our pilots will use them for military actions. And there are a lot of, as far as I know, there are a lot of weapons going into Ukraine now from the West. So.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I have two questions to you now on this, Iryna. First is coming from the audience. Somebody wishes to know whether Ukraine, when it was still a socialist republic in the USSR, had some kind of a specific position then. So whether it was seen differently from the others?
No, absolutely not.
Was just one. Okay.
It was just one. It was one of the best conditions there. But it functioned probably like the European Union now, because we have, for example, plane collected in Moscow. You have how it's called, the motors collected in Kharkov. You have some other stuff, parts of the plane collected in other, and all republics were in complete exchange. So Ukraine was absolutely the same.
Yeah.
Something special.
Okay, and second question now coming from me. Before the war, was there a realistic scenario within the country that was realistically debated in 2022 that Ukraine might become a member of NATO, or that Ukraine might become a member of the European Union?
I think about European Union, it started already in 2014. It was Yanukovych, and there was this not orange revolution, orange was 2004. It was in 2014 when Yanukovych, under pressure from Putin, refused to sign this agreement about association with the European Union, and therefore it was the first motive when that revolution started, so to say, Maidan, so to say, when in Kiev there are thousands of people declaring that they don't support this pro-Russian course, so it was about the European Union. So Ukraine is basically it's already 10 years and about association with European Union. I think we have problems with corruption. We had some problems with probably human rights, I don't know. But there were some issues, and also harmonization of laws. For example, we didn't have the law on data protection until the harmonization procedure started, for example. Also, I think it's a lot of standardization completely. We have completely different standards from the Soviet time. We don't have compatible standards of technical. And there are a lot of technical issues with the European Union, but I think these negotiations last already for 10 years. About NATO, I think Putin, he is blocking that. It is one of the requests from Putin that Ukraine must declare a neutral state, even though Ukraine would be happy to be in NATO just to have support. So Ukraine is basically pro-NATO, and it is pro-European Union.
So you are telling me if the people were free to decide in some kind of democratic procedure, a clear majority would vote for EU and would vote for NATO membership?
I think so. Now, definitely.
Yeah, but even before the war, right? So that was
even before. I'm not sure. I think so because of NATO. We had also long discussions. But I think it is difficult from Russian side because NATO is completely US. It's North Atlantic military organization. It is really by United States, and Russia is like opponent of United States. Therefore, Ukraine is like in that position. Of course, like historically and from language and from culture and from whatever, we are closer to Russia than to the States. But after this step, of course, it is more. Goes in favor of NATO, and also Ukraine, as far as know, they had after the breakdown for Soviet Union, they had a partnership with Russia, Belarus, and the Ukraine, for customs purposes, also for different other purposes. And it's not to say that Ukraine. After Ukraine it had like a sword, I think, in the world potential of nuclear weapons when the Soviet Union collapsed, and they sold it. So now it's nuclear-free country, but they had a big potential. And after the collapse of Soviet Union, there was a Budapest memorandum. I think it's Budapest, where there were 8 countries to guarantee Ukrainian, so to say, sovereignty. And to guarantee like peace, non-invasion, and Russia was one of them. So we rely on Russia as our guarantor, and Russia is the one who breaks it. They really tried to hide the conflict with Crimea and with Donetsk and Luhansk, like it is like internal conflict, like it is something we have in Catalonia in Spain, or they have in Ireland, that it is like conflict. But I'm not in Donetsk, but my personal view that it is not, it is also hidden invasion of Russia, because Donetsk was one of the richest regions in Ukraine. They speak Russian, like I also speak Russian in Kiev, and half of the Kiev speak Russian, but it is not that you don't feel Ukrainian. It's for historical reasons. Therefore, for us, for example, for me, and I had friends from Donetsk, it was obvious that it is not Donetsk, because they had no reasons to to get out of Ukraine, because they had quite good life here. It was Ahmed, he made it a good European cities. He had Donetsk. They had more European city probably than Kiev at that time. So I think it's this, even with Donetsk and Luhansk, it was already like a plan of Putin to take over the country. So therefore, like we also, so it's I think it's a long-term strategy or something.
And when it comes to the president who is acting at the moment for Ukraine, and the government that is acting at the moment, would you call this a democratically elected government? And is this supported by the people of Ukraine after and before the war? I mean, after, obviously, during the war, I mean, I think the question is no longer seriously to be asked, right? But, sorry?
With Zelensky, well, it was, I think Zelensky is like in second or third year already right now. We had Poroshenko before. Poroshenko was a strong president, was strong yes, he's oligarch, but he is, he has a good position in diplomacy. Even some of before that, he controlled some of the factories, and he had really good economic understanding of situation. So he was a strong president before. Before Zelensky, or before his election, nobody took him seriously, me as well, and there were really anti-Zelensky campaign because he had no political background, no experience in municipalities or in governing the state or governing the city, at least. I mean, therefore, there was not really clear with Zelensky, but what was their problem with Poroshenko, because he is oligarch, and yes, it was not also not so not the favorite candidate, so to say. So they had stage chances, but was Zelensky, he was a completely, it was more democratic. He is younger, he thinks differently. And because Poroshenko is more pro-Soviet candidate, so to say, I have no really doubts that Zelensky was elected by the majority of Ukrainians. It was not because he was out of the power at that time. Poroshenko, if he would like to manipulate, he would take it for him. Therefore, I have no doubt that Zelensky was elected through democratic vote, but even I would say it was really in Kiev, a lot of elite, like lawyers, I have more like network of lawyers, they were pretty much against Zelensky, but the vote for Zelensky was that he is more like more young and he thinks differently. He thinks like this generation and not like 50, 60 years generation. So I would say he is completely democratic candidate, and he is elected it was a choice of the people.
Of the people, yeah.
Maybe young people, maybe not so smart people. I don't know, because but it was definitely the choice of the nation.
Yeah.
Yes, during now they have a conflict. I think before this war, there was a conflict with Poroshenko and with Zelensky about political schemes, and there was also some tax and evasion of Poroshenko hidden by disclosed. Therefore, Zelensky also he's not experienced in governing the state. Therefore, probably they made mistakes. Don't really follow political situation so closely between Zelensky and Poroshenko, but he has a normal position there. I wouldn't say he is weak candidate, he is weak president, but they make mistakes, and it is it's not so not so strong. But now he is definitely his rating is much higher because he supports he is a patriot.
Yeah. Okay, which brings me back to another question, Iryna. You stressed before that Poland is one of the bases now for aircraft that is to be used, which brings me to the question what Ukraine or you would expect now in the situation in which we are from neighboring countries such as Poland, or from the EU, or from NATO, or from Germany, or from Austria. So what do you think that these countries should do?
Well, I think to support the military is the best now, because every day there are people dying. Really, it's horrible, and not only military people die. There are kids. The children. They are now delivered or born in this underground. I mean, it's this completely not medical conditions, so to say, or even in metro stations. I mean, because people are hiding there. So I think they also invade first aid cars. There are hospitals. I mean, it's every day there are people dying. Really, I think the first thing to do is to really stop military things. I think the economic sanctions are already massive now, and I have friends from Moscow, for example. She lives in London, and I know that she says Russia will be like something like North Korea or Iran, because they have queues to get money. It's everything blocked, and ruble is falling. I mean, they also have horrible conditions, but nothing stops Putin because the troops are going, and even today there was 67 kilometers of troops going through Belarus, and the missile attacks go through Belarus. Therefore, I think first to do is to support military as much as we can, or you can, because just to stop the war. People are dying really, and there are already like 5,000 refugees. As far as I know, it will be probably a million. And somebody must accept. I think it's also a big what's called challenge for Germany now to take those people here, and most probably, and for Poland, for Romania, they all accept refugees. All borders are open now. They accept all, with even without passes and so. But I think it's horrible. But I think the first thing to do is to stop military actions. Really.
And what would you say about the argument that so two arguments here. The first one is that it's not realistic to stop this aggression with military means simply because of the size of the Russian army. And the second question, what about the risk that this whole conflict is then escalating and bringing other European countries such as Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Lithuania at risk?
Well, the first question, as far as I know from the reports of Ukrainian armed forces and what we see from the statistics, there were around 130,000 troops of Russia on the borders. Mm-hmm. Ukraine had prepared like 260 or something, like already double size. What we see now is that Russia has already used around 2/3 of its military potential. Mm-hmm. Because when you see statistics like with missile attacks going, with every day it drops. Like they throw less and less. Yeah, there are troops coming, but in Russia altogether, it has like around 750 or something units of military units. 130 was in Ukraine. Probably now they try to take more. But they also border China and Japan, and they border other countries. And I think they also took, well, I don't think that they cannot really take all the forces from the whole country. But of course, if you compare 700 against like 300 or something Ukraine has, of course, it's double the size. But we still hope that Ukraine will stand. But of course, and we don't think that Russia will mobilize all its military potential. And of course, I think Europe has to support, because I think it is also in the interest of Europe to support Ukraine. I know this talks about nuclear, that Putin warned about initiating nuclear war or nuclear attacks. I don't know how to take it, because Putin probably makes no jokes when he tells something, because nobody took it seriously when he said that he will take over Kiev in 5 days or something. He said it in 2014 or 15 or whatever. And now a couple of years later, he said it the same. Therefore, I wouldn't say that it is like a joke. I don't think he will invade Poland or Latvia or Estonia now. First, because he is afraid of NATO. They are not. I think Putin is not so brave to go against United States or against NATO. He is brave to go against Ukraine because Ukraine is not in NATO. But I think he is not so crazy to go against NATO state. Therefore, I think there is no direct danger for those countries now. At least I think so. It may come later, probably if he takes over Ukraine. And he may think that he's so strong that he can take all, like the whole world or whatever. At that time, probably it will be a danger, but I don't see direct danger now. In my eyes, I'm not a military expert on anything, but I don't see the danger now. I think the danger will be for Europe if we don't stop Putin. That's what I see. Not because I want to make you be afraid, but if I follow the conflict with Georgia and with Ukraine, we also didn't take it seriously. Now it's in our country. Therefore, I will not be surprised if Putin. I don't know whether he stops at some point. I think the world must stop him. The sooner the better. That's my personal view, so to say.
And when it comes to the weapons that are delivered, Iryna, somebody is asking whether you know anything about whether they are compatible with the system that Ukraine is using so far, and whether you have the people being sufficiently skilled to use this material?
They are already in use. So
yeah, so there is no specific issue there. So what is coming is usable, right, at the moment?
Probably it's already ordered somehow, because I think they use juvenile. I think from the United States, and I think also something, but it is already in use. So it's completely like replenishing the storage of the whatever it is, missile or the aircraft. So it's completely compatible.
No problem
because
that you are aware
Ukraine
of.
has only European forces, because I don't think that Ukraine produces weapons itself. At least I don't think so. Therefore, if it has forces or arms or weapons, they are from Europe or United States or Britain already. So it's compatible with, as far as I know, again.
Okay, so coming back to the morale and to the perception of the people. So what is happening at the moment, if I understand it correctly, is that the people of Ukraine hope and believe that they can resist the military attack sufficiently long so that with the support of NATO and Europeans, in order to achieve what? So what is the goal? To get Putin out of the country with the borders as they were before the 22nd of February, or what is the strategic aim?
Well, I think people, they don't really think that they can stop the war, but they try to support the militaries, because what is the problem with Russia? Because we have, for example, like in Kiev, we had yesterday or something, the whole day. It was the hour of the civilians were not allowed to go to the streets. There were a lot of like diversants, or how to call Russian people. You cannot, if here will be sitting Russian girl, we speak the same language, we look the same. It's very difficult to distinguish who is Ukrainian, who is Russian. Except you ask some Ukrainian, because most Russians don't speak Ukrainian, and those Ukrainians who speak Russian, they do speak Ukrainian as well. I think therefore it's difficult. It's not really the people that are fighting, it's military who are fighting. It's not people support how they can, because why they do this? Because it's not like a war in normal understanding of Europeans. It is a completely terroristic war when they come into the cities and they speak the same language, and they shoot civilians, they shoot hospitals, they take the white flag, the white how's it called, flag, and they Ukrainians come and they shoot it. I mean, it's completely against all possible rules. Therefore, people they fight because they attack them. I think no civilians would ever like to fight anyone, but they have to do it because it's not war like against military. It's not that the Ukrainian troops and Russian troops meet at some whatever devastated field and they really compete. No, because they come into Ukrainian cities and they kill civilians. Therefore, people have to defend themselves. That's why it's going like that. So what we want to achieve, we want to have, just to have our country. I mean, to have Russia not in our territory, not to have Russian people here. We don't do that at all, because first, Ukraine is a democratic country. We stand for our rights. We tell what we want, like not what we want, but we don't have that censorship in Russia. When you say something against, you get landed in prison. For example, I asked Masha, we are in friendship for many years from Moscow. She's in Moscow, but in London, but her mama is in Moscow. And she says, do you want that Russians go and they all are in prison? But I think it's better if Russians go and in prison than the whole half of Ukraine like dies or something. Therefore, I really blame Russians for doing nothing here. And then about the question what we want. So we don't want that regime here. We don't want to get into, for example, I was in Kiev. I wasn't at the revolution 2014 because I was here already in Germany, but I was in 2004. and it was peaceful. But we already had some friends from Russia. And we also met, for example, personally, Boris Nemtsov. He was an opponent of Putin. He wasn't Krishatik. He just like walked there. You can just say, yes, we just met him also. Hello. And he said, yes, hello, I wish you support and so on. So it was completely democratic. Nobody was afraid. And we had one girl from our team, like we were students at that time. And he said, if it would be in Russia, one Chechenian or something would just shoot and we'll say, oh, sorry, it is Chechenian shooting. Therefore, in Russia, it is, if people live in fear. You see, Nemtsov was murdered. Khodorkovsky is in London, was in prison for 10 years. Navalny is in prison. And even if you say your free opinion, you are in prison tomorrow. And they really block meetings, they block everything. We don't want to have it here. We don't want to have it in Ukraine. It's not like really, we are not against Russians because we have Russian friends. I think every family has relatives or friends, but I'm completely against that political regime and we are not used to it. So we don't want that at all because it's like killing the nation, so to say. It's killing your culture, it's killing everything. What we want to, of course, we want to have Russia outside of our territory and the diversants, whatever. And I would say Ukrainian requirement is to free up, not before the war, but to free up Crimea, Lugansk and Donetsk, because these are Ukrainian territories. They were legally annexed to Ukraine. Like Donetsk and Lugansk, it is Ukrainian territory for years, till the state borders of all countries probably were framed. And nobody really divides the borders now, I think, in this century. And about Crimea, I don't know how the West perceives it, but Crimea was, I think it was taken by Ekaterina, like Ukrainian Russian queen in some 17th century. Then it was in the state, in part of Russian Empire at that time, or Russian, it was not empire, it was Korolevstvo or something like of that, yes, of that regime. Then during the Soviet time, it was Khrushchev who made a state state document to annex Crimea to Ukraine. Why? For water supply from Dnieper, because we have a Dnieper river that goes through the whole Ukraine from north to the Black Sea, and because Crimea had a big demand of food, of water, of everything. It is like how it's called, it's very dry land. They don't have good enough food there, they don't have enough water. Therefore, Ukraine was a rich country, and therefore they did it to have it like a, for those humanitarian, so to say, purposes. But it was legal act, it was no conflict at that time. But instead of, because Crimea was annexed, it was bad land, so to say, but it has entered into the Black Sea. Part of Ukraine, of the same area, so to of the same area as Crimea. It is like near where the Sochi now. It's called the Krasnodar. It went to Russia. It was like exchange of territory, so to say. We got Crimea for to support with them, and it was also clear. But Ukraine gave Russia black soil, so to say. That is the area of Sochi now. Therefore, like, it was not legal document of exchange of territories, but it was legal in the sense that it was not. Now Russia, they say that Crimea is Russian, but then please give us back the Krasnodar back. Please give us Sochi back then if they want to have back Crimea. Therefore, I would say that what Ukraine wants, to have Russia away and to have the whole territory of Ukraine united, like Luhansk, Donetsk, and Crimea as well.
But Iryna, with all due respect, I would like to ask you how realistic this scenario is at the moment, because what we have at the moment is a Russian attack under Putin. And even if things go very well, even if Ukraine won the war, what would that mean then? How could we imagine a world where Putin would then say, I don't think that it's realistic that Putin will, after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of war, say, okay, I'm going back and I'm giving Crimea back. So how is this going to end if there is no internal movement in Russia ending the regime of Putin?
Well, there is a movement in Russia now.
Yeah.
They are really going into many cities that are also revolt. There is all of this in Belarus as well. Russia is suffering economically a lot.
So that's the option, right? The option would be Putin's regime must end, right? But as long as this is not happening, what would be the outcome? I mean,
the outcome, we have two outcomes. If Ukraine wins, they will force they had negotiations, I think, yesterday. And the first round, it was not with Putin because Putin is in Ural, as far what we know now. And they plan another round. And the requirements of Ukraine are that Putin takes away the militaries and that leaves the country in the state it was 1991.
Yes, I know. And the answer of Russia obviously was very negative, and the war is ongoing, right?
Russian requirement is to Ukraine to declare neutral state, don't go to NATO, and then how they call denationalization. It means we forget that we are Ukrainians and we say we are Russians. Something like that. And they just take over he is like president of Ukraine. That he's required. I mean, we have two options, but I think if he will take it, then 10 years later he will go to Poland. I think that is a real risk now. Because I think Putin, I don't like this comparison, but I don't think that he will stop unless sanctions, unless something stops him. But there are two scenarios. Either they win, according to their scenario, or Ukraine wins with support of Europe, according to our scenario.
I'm just asking because many of the Western commentaries at the moment are arguing in the way that the Western countries need to produce some kind of exit scenario for Putin. So that he can, that this war is clearly not going in the way he would have expected this to go. This is the argument, right? The argument is this war is clearly not going in the way Putin had expected this to go. There needs to be an option for him that he can end this without completely losing all reputation and staying in power. And I'm asking you what you think about this argument.
I would support that argument. I would really use all possible means. I understand the fear of European Union or NATO to really get into the conflict because he warns about activation of nuclear weapons. Nobody wants to half of Earth is destroyed, of course. And I wouldn't take Putin unseriously. I think if he says that, maybe he thinks it's possible. But I think the world must stop him. I don't think Ukraine is so strong to stop him alone. I mean, I really admire our people, but I would really support European Union and NATO to stop him because my guess is he will not stop with Ukraine.
Okay.
My guess.
Okay.
Because there were already long-lasting conflicts with Estonia, with Latvia.
Yeah, I know. I was in Latvia more than 20 years ago, quite frequently, and it was unbelievable then already. I was there in 2000 and 2002, and it was an ongoing problem already then, every day.
Yeah, therefore, I would say it's not only, it's also in the interest of Europe and European Union to press Putin to some negotiable ending on this.
Yeah. Which brings me to another very big topic, Iryna, if I may, which is the whole issue of disinformation, cyber war, information warfare happening at the moment. Do you have any recommendations how Europeans should get informed and not to become victim of disinformation from both sides or one side? Is there anything that you would share with us? And how are you doing this on your own, for your own perspective?
My own, well, what first, I would say in Russia, they have really horrible propaganda. It's also declared on the legal state, because I think I was in Russia, and I have relatives in St. Petersburg, my close relative there. So I visited Russia and I have friends from Moscow. So already at that time, they had law, it was 10 years ago, that prohibited, for example, foreign capitals, foreign companies, foreign investments to hold Russian media in the first two tiers, like they allowed foreign investment only like in the third level of owning a country. They have censorship now. There is a geopolitical sovereign identity, like not sovereign identity, but how it's called, internet. They completely sovereign. It's like sovereign internet in Russia because it's like censorship. And I think in Russia, the propaganda is very high. Even in Germany, I think a lot of people who are of Russian origin, and there are many, many people here who are from Kazakhstan, they watch Russian TV and they watch Russian channels because they obviously don't speak German, and obviously because they want to be informed about the state of there. Therefore, those channels, but I have no doubt that it is very propagandistic in a way that they, as far as I know, how they present the situation that Ukrainians are like neo-nationalists, all of us basically. And we kind of destroy Russians here, and we have war against Russians, and we lies with United States against Russia, and that's why they try to defend Russians in Ukraine. As far as I know, but again, I don't follow the news so much. But again, when I was in Russia like 10 years ago, it was already conflict with my relatives because they have completely different image of what's going on in Ukraine as we had it in Ukraine at the time. I mean, it's already a very long-standing conflict. And I remember there was a murder of some journalist, and the Russian news already spoke about it in the media with some talk shows, when in Ukraine, I think there was no state attorney procedure about that. It was completely surprising because they had like talk shows about that when the people here didn't even know that in that scale. I think for you, for example, I also don't like German news, for example, because because they talk about the Ukraine, and the next news comes about the Nord Stream, and then the third news come about that diesel will be more expensive for 5 cents. If you compare people dying there, and then you pay 5 cents more for petrol, I think. Therefore, I don't also listen German news. I follow Ukrainian news for obvious reasons because I want to have news from my country. But if I want to have neutral position, I see BBC or I see CNN. I think if you want to have some neutral thing, just watch news from US, probably BBC, Austria, Germany, France, whatever you have. We have a good majority here. What I don't watch Russia, definitely. I don't see their news because it is. But I think the best way to stay neutral is to really compare the reports from different countries, because I think every country has more or less a bit subjective position.
Yeah. And what about social media? Are you following social media channels? Because this is interesting to see how much information is distributed once again via, in particular, Twitter, but also YouTube and Facebook.
I don't really follow. Well, I followed Facebook. I have accounts on LinkedIn. I have accounts on Twitter. I have accounts on Facebook. I have it in whatever. But I'm not an active person there because of time, because it's yes. But of course, for Ukrainians, it is more pro-Ukrainian, and it is more defensive war, how I see it as well. In Russia, for example, Masha says she's in Moscow, but she lives in London again. But she says that people understand it quite well. And with Navalny, it was also already a huge meeting with Nemtsov, because people are simply afraid. Of course, there are people who are propagandistic, who really follow Putin. I wouldn't say not. Probably there are even 70%, because probably older population, but there are also people who understand the situation completely, like in European way, like we understand that it is like a propaganda. So I think the best way to get informed from different channels, from different.
Okay. Last question from my side, Iryna, if I may, which is what can each individual in Germany and in Austria or in Western Europe do at the moment to support Ukraine and Ukrainians?
Well, I think first there are donations, of course, a lot. I think in every country. If you can support the pro-European position, please do it. If you can support that. If you have Russian people, please talk to them as well. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities, of course. Now, I know that yes, now the best support, of course, we do it direct. We do it in the very direct way with refugees. We do it direct way with donations. Like I personally donated to the national bank account of Ukraine, to armed forces of Ukraine, to medicines. We really now in Poland, and we in Germany, we really do huge work here with humanitarian support. For like refugees. We really prepare. Like I know that on Thursday there will be a European Commission debate about this special status of Ukrainian refugees, because they want to have them special status with the right to live like for 3 years, and with the right to work, like not like a asylum, and not like refugees in normal, but something like a special status. So I would say, whatever you can do, I wouldn't ask for military support or for anything, but whatever you think appropriate, and whatever I think it is in your interest, because I think it is in the interest of all of us to stop this. Do whatever you can. I mean, it's up to you, of course. And thank you very much even for this discussion. I think it is also helpful to at least that we have different, that I can express my point of view, my position, Ukrainian position, so to say. And I think Zelensky, he had a speech today in the European Commission. So it is our position, and personally, what I listened from my relatives there, from my brother, my father, my uncle, and so on, and politicians, it's more or less the same what they say. So it's not like that Zelensky says one story and my father would say another story. And I think if you have like sympathy for people dying and staying without houses, of course, please do whatever you can. If you can support with reasonable arguments, please do that on that level, that stop at least Russian thinking the way they think it. Because my attitude to Russians really changed a lot from this like happenings. I have nothing against Russia, but I'm not, because they're like silent accomplices of these criminal actions that are going against the whole nation. I think please do it, at least that, to change this perception.
Okay, Iryna, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for all the information that you shared with us. I'm very grateful for this. All the best to you and to your family, and I do hope that we can have, if I may ask you once again, a follow-up of this in due course in the near future. I would appreciate this. Thank you for today. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience that I didn't ask?
Well, it was comprehensive enough. Thank you very much again for giving me the chance to express my point of view, to talk to you, talk with Europeans. Well, I think we covered a lot of things. Of course, I would ask to support my country. Of course, I would ask to at least to support with some medicines, because the hospitals are in very bad condition now. The hospitals are bombed. They don't manage to have to cure the injuries. There are, I understand that I also not a favor, like for militaries, but at least support whatever you can, or maybe medicines, maybe refugees, maybe. Of course, every support is very much appreciated, definitely. Yeah, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Everything you can do, just be with us with your thoughts, just pray for us and declare your position, pro-Ukrainian position. It's already helpful, so stay with us. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Iryna. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who listened to this. Stay connected with us, stay interested, and in particular, stay or become as healthy as possible, as quickly as possible. Take care and all the best to all of you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.